was almost always objectified, and they did not really have their own stories to tell. So they were always a part of the plot and never the plot itself.
Hi, Aryama. How are you? Welcome to the Female Gaze by Udanta. Great to have you here. How are you feeling about it?
I'm feeling really great, Aman. I think this is a wonderful initiative, and I would love to have a quick chat with you about this. How are you doing?
I'm great. I'm super excited about this. Before we jump in, I just realized today that the wordplay in indigenous, there's a full stop after in this, so it's India and
Yeah,
indigenous, so for our
yeah,
people, which is like quite cool. I just realized because I was
yeah.
almost genius, I would say.
Thank you. That was a conscious decision because the word indigenous has a different connotation, and
Yeah.
it would not be right to use it as it is.
Hmm.
So that was a wordplay of sorts.
That is cool. Okay, so we'll jump in. So my first question is a little bit more broader, and then we'll get a little bit specific. So,
Okay.
how do you view the journey of women in Indian cinema? And more so in like the opportunities they had and the actresses that came before us. Like, how is your take on its progression?
Right. So, well, I would say, in the 70s, late 60s, 70s, 80s, the popular cinema that we had at that time, what we used to broadly call as Bollywood, and which
Hmm.
sort of began to represent Indian cinema in general, that had a very warped portrayal of women because they were either the mother, the very sexy heroine, the villain sometimes, and it was almost always objectified, and they did not really have their own stories to tell. So they were always a part of the plot and never the plot itself. But
Hmm.
if we look at parallel cinema of the same years, the 70s and the 80s, once again, we do actually see stories with women characters, with pretty strong female characters at that. We see the stories of Satyajit Ray. We have films like Charulata, we have films like Mahanagor, where the central characters are women. And they
Hmm.
have their own thoughts, they have their own, they have agency. So
Hmm.
there was this divide. But
Hmm.
now what we see is that there is more of a conscious choice to write stories about women, to
Hmm.
actually include them as a main character in the plot. And I think there's a lot more consciousness among audience and among the filmmakers themselves, which is
Hmm.
why we see a lot more female centric characters in popular cinema as well.
Hmm. That's true. So on that only, so when like as you said, right, because giving women independency and agency in their own movies. So how like especially now in like recent cinema, like when women have intersecting roles, right? Like suppose they are a mother as well as they are working like in English, or in Piku, like she's a daughter as well as she has her own job and everything. So I feel like how hard is it to bring
Right.
all those roles convincingly, and to stay true to a human person also, not just make them a you know independent woman who has to do everything, or a person who only sits at home. Like where does that
Right.
fall in place for you?
Right. Uh, about that, I would say I think the idea that characters do not need to be perfect,
Hmm.
characters can be
Hmm.
flawed,
Hmm.
and the fact that a woman a woman has been playing different roles all these years, right? It's not new, but we have seen women going to the workplace in films of Basu Chatterjee as well.
Hmm.
But now what we see is we look at the different parts of their lives, and it is okay to see that they cannot be great at everything. And it is
Right.
okay to have flawed characters as well.
Hmm.
Like we see in Piku, you mentioned Piku. So Piku is good at her job. Piku also is a caregiver.
Mm.
And there is a conflict between these two roles.
Right.
The film actually portrays this very beautifully, right? So the fact that they it's okay to not do all the roles perfectly is
Mm.
something that it's slow, but we are, I think, sort of accepting it now.
Mm. A lot of movies that have tried to make sure women are at the center of the story, but they yet take away the agency. Like there's a discussion about Dangal, even though it's progressive enough, it's not. It's yet making sure the women don't choose what they want to do, which is, I mean, a different conversation. But I think does, like, even with the best intentions, can the male gaze yet seep into movies and TV, as we in India at least?
I watch a lot of old Indian cinema, so I could say that when we I love the films of Basu Chatterjee, like I mentioned. While they have strong female characters, and while I would like to love them, they would do something or behave in a manner or say something which will not align with the times I live in and will
Mm.
not align with the thoughts that I have as a woman. I would not like my favorite character to do something that she has done.
Mm.
And that's when the conflict begins. That's when I don't understand, should I like this film or should I not like this film? Should I attribute this particular character of this woman to the time she lived in, or should I just accept it as it was at that point? But now it's it's easier to understand her viewpoint a bit more, and it's
Mm.
easier to think in such a manner that it's a conscious choice to uh, escape the male gaze as it is. So
Mm.
that is how I think the evolution has been, I would say.
Yeah, great. Okay. So we'll jump into rapid fire. Just get some recommendations out of you, because at
Okay.
Udanta, after all, we do recommendations. Your favorite, female character in a movie, basically a movie with one of your favorite female characters that a lot of people might not have watched.
Okay. Um, a very favorite character of mine is Deepthi Naval's character in Mirch Masala by Ketan
Mm.
Mehta.
Mm.
So the lead character is Smita Patil's
Yeah,
character, which is also a very, very powerful character. Recommend the film, and I would want everyone to watch it.
perfect. And then if you have one, what do you say, a boss woman character in a movie that you've always admired.
I mean, going by the definition of boss woman, what I remember right now is again a Smita Patil character, which is in Manthan.
Mm.
That was a pretty powerful role, and there are a lot of layers to the character. It's not a silly one, like you defined, but
Mm.
I yes, it's a pretty boss woman character.
Wonderful, great suggestion. I actually love the movie. I recently watched it because I've also been looking up at like Indian cinema from like the movies that I might not have watched or my parents might not have spoken about. So yeah, great movie.
Right.
Okay, so
That's why.
I think that's a wrap on all we had from our side.